There are sounds that live in a place, and then there are sounds that travel. In Ethiopia, one man created music that did both. His rhythms were hypnotic, his melodies haunting. His songs carried the soul of Ethiopia, yet spoke to the world. His name is Mulatu Astatke, the father of Ethio-Jazz. But his story is not one of overnight success. It is a story of a boy sent abroad to become an engineer, who instead invented a new music, a story of exile and survival under dictatorship, of silence, rediscovery, and triumph, and of how a forgotten sound from Addis Ababa would one day echo across jazz festivals, Hollywood films, and hip-hop beats. This is the journey of Mulatu Astatke. What is Ethio-Jazz? It begins with Ethiopia's ancient musical system, qenet. 4 modal scales, tezeta, bati, ambassel, anchihoy. Each one evokes an emotion, nostalgia, joy, longing, spiritual intensity. Now imagine those modes colliding with Western jazz harmony, Latin percussion, funk grooves. Imagine congas echoing the heartbeat of Addis, vibraphone tones shimmering like incense in a cathedral. That was Mulatu's gift. He built a bridge between Ethiopia and the world. And in doing so, he challenged the idea that jazz belonged only to America. He showed that music, like people, can travel, transform, and return home stronger. Mulatu was born in Jimma in 1943, into a wealthy Christian Amhara family. His childhood was filled with sound, the chants of Ethiopian Orthodox services, the brass of Addis Ababa's National Theatre. But his family had other plans. Music, they thought, was no career for their son. At 13, they sent him abroad, to Wales, to study aeronautical engineering. But destiny whispered differently. In the classrooms of Lindisfarne College, Mulatu discovered drama and music. He was drawn to the clarinet, then piano. He began sneaking into London clubs, hearing African highlife, Caribbean calypso, and Latin jazz. And there, a thought struck him. Where is Ethiopia in all this? He realized his homeland's music was missing from the global stage. That realization would shape his life's mission. In the early 1960s, Mulatu crossed the Atlantic. Boston, the Berklee College of Music. He made history as Berklee's first African student. And here, something clicked. Professors encouraged him, be yourself. Don't imitate. Innovate. So Mulatu experimented. He took the pentatonic scales of Ethiopia, tezeta, bati, and laid them against jazz harmonies. He added Latin percussion, the vibraphone, instruments unheard of in Ethiopian music. He absorbed Coltrane's freedom, Miles Davis's cool, Tito Puente's rhythm. And from that mix, a new sound was born. By 1966, in New York, he formed the Ethiopian Quintet, mostly Puerto Rican musicians. Together, they recorded Afro-Latin Soul Volumes 1 and 2. It was the first document of Ethio-Jazz, but it was too radical for its time. The jazz world didn't understand it. Ethiopia wasn't ready for it. Mulatu had created a new music, but would anyone listen? In New York, Mulatu put his vision to the test. His Ethiopian Quintet was unique, a band of mostly Puerto Rican musicians, led by an Ethiopian vibraphonist. Their albums, Afro-Latin Soul Volumes 1 and 2, were bold. The tracks swung with congas, piano riffs, and vibraphone melodies that hinted at Ethiopia's scales. One song even used Spanish lyrics, unheard of from an Ethiopian musician. But recognition was elusive. Jazz critics didn't know where to place him. Ethiopians wondered if his sound had strayed too far. Mulatu was caught in between worlds, too Ethiopian for America, too foreign for home. And yet, He refused to abandon his vision. He knew this music mattered. He knew it carried something larger than himself, the voice of Ethiopia, waiting to be heard. In 1969, Mulatu returned to Ethiopia, and he came back with fire. Addis Ababa was alive. They called it Swinging Addis. Cafes buzzed with soul, funk, and jazz. Bands like the Police Orchestra and the Imperial Bodyguard Band filled the city with brass and rhythm. Into this mix, Mulatu introduced something new, the vibraphone, the conga, a sound no one in Addis had ever heard. At first, there was resistance. Traditionalists whispered that he was corrupting Ethiopia's heritage. But slowly, the city began to move with his rhythms. By 1972, with Mulatu of Ethiopia and then Yekatit Ethio-Jazz in 1974, he had defined a genre. These were not just records, they were blueprints for Ethio-Jazz. And in 1973, the ultimate validation, Duke Ellington himself toured Ethiopia. Mulatu joined him on stage, a young Ethiopian vibraphonist standing alongside one of jazz's greatest legends. For a moment, Ethio-Jazz stood at the very center of the global conversation. Ethio-Jazz became the heartbeat of Addis nightlife. Mulatu collaborated with Ethiopia's brightest stars, Mahmoud Ahmed, Hailu Mergia, Tilahun Gesese. Together, they wove Ethiopian modes with modern grooves. This wasn't just music, it was identity, a declaration that Ethiopia could modernize while holding on to its roots. The vibraphone shimmered above funky guitar lines. Horns riffed in modes no American jazzman had ever played. The dance floors of Addis pulsed with the rhythm of something entirely new. But in 1974, the music fell silent. The emperor was overthrown. The Derg military junta seized power. The new regime banned Western influence. Clubs were closed. Lyrics were censored. The joyous nightlife of Addis was gone. Many musicians fled into exile. Others were silenced. But Mulatu stayed. And in his silence, there was survival. Because his music had no words, only instruments. The regime could not censor what it could not translate. So he kept playing. At official events, at ceremonies. Quietly, cautiously, he preserved the flame of Ethio-Jazz. It was a lonely path. The global stage forgot his name. The vibrant city that once danced to his rhythms was now subdued. Mulatu called it a journey through the wilderness. Years where hope was faint, and his sound, revolutionary, daring, seemed destined to vanish. For 2 decades, Mulatu's music lived only in memory and in forgotten vinyl, buried in basements, until Paris, 1997. A French producer named Francis Falsito launched the Ethiopiques series, a project to reissue Ethiopia's lost golden age. Volume 4 was different. It focused on just one man, Mulatu Astatke. For the first time in decades, his vibraphone rang out across Europe, America, and Japan. Critics called it mesmerizing. Audiences called it new, though the music had been recorded 30 years before. Mulatu had been rediscovered. Then, in 2005, came a second miracle. Film director Jim Jarmusch used 7 of Mulatu's tracks in his film Broken Flowers. Bill Murray's lonely road trip was carried by the haunting tones of Ethio-Jazz. For millions of viewers, this was their first taste of Mulatu's music. Suddenly, the man once forgotten was a global cult hero. And then, the beat dropped. Hip-hop producers discovered Mulatu. His grooves were irresistible. Nas and Damian Marley sampled Yegale Tezeta for As We Enter. Kanye West wove his melodies into hip-hop soundscapes. Madlib uncut chemist, Canaan, all drew from the deep well of Ethio-Jazz. Mulatu's rhythms traveled into rap, reggae, funk. His music reached a generation that had never even heard the word Ethio-Jazz. The sound of Addis had become the sound of the world. Mulatu did not slow down. In 2008, he joined Harvard as a Radcliffe Fellow, composing an opera based on Ethiopia's ancient chants. At MIT, he modernized traditional instruments like the krar and washant, expanding their sound for the future. He collaborated with musicians across continents, the Heliocentrics in London, Black Jesus Experience in Australia, Hudna Orchestra in Tel Aviv. At 81, Mulatu continues to tour, headlining festivals, filling concert halls, inspiring musicians half his age. His 2025 album, Mulatu Plays Mulatu, reimagines his classics with extended improvisations and new fire. To Mulatu, the journey is never over. Ethio-Jazz is not a relic. It is alive, evolving, still traveling.